Okay, it looks like we're having a little bit of difficulty on our side with Chris not being able to unmute himself. So we're working on that, and it should be just a few more minutes. We really appreciate your patience.
Okay, can people hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Can people see my screen?
Yes, Chris, I can see your screen, and we can hear you.
Okay, we're ready to roll. So welcome everybody to the Adopting a 10X Mindset webinar. First question I have for everybody is who saw the amazing game last night between the Celtics and the Warriors? Raise your hand. So my Celtics are now 14-0. They have 10x'd their performance versus last year. So what we're going to talk about today is how you can adopt a 10x mindset and improve your business tenfold. So there's a very, very simple premise at work here. If you're running a business or you're running your own life, you simply can't make your business or your life 10 times better unless you intentionally say, I'm going to make my business or my life 10 times better. So you have to first adopt a 10x mindset. Very simple premise, okay? And then what I found over the last 5 years is that there's some very helpful steps that you can use to create a 10x mindset, but then really put a methodology in place to accomplish that. So the first thing you have to do is you have to make it a priority. You have to say, I want my business, I want my nonprofit, I want my life, I want my health, whatever it is. I want it to be 10 times better than it is, not 10%, 10 times better than it is. So that has to become a priority for you. You have to wake up in the morning and think about this. Then what I recommend you do is you put together a dream team. A dream team is a bunch of smart people who care about you, your future, and your outcome. And then what I have found works is you can run what I call a high impact, low work process. And then you can develop and evaluate potential paths forward. And if you have a board of directors or you have a board of advisors, you can call a special purpose board meeting to discuss and debate it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about this for 20-ish minutes, and then we'll do Q&A. Everybody like that plan? So the first thing you have to do is make it a priority. You have to say to yourself, I want things in my life. I want my business. I want my relationship. I want my family. I want my health. I want it to be 10 times better than it is now. So you have to make that a priority. So this is written in the context of a CEO of a business. As a CEO, you have a lot of roles. You probably have more roles than you want to have. But a super critical role is you are the only person in the business who can identify the quantum leaps the business can take and then figure out how do you grow your business exponentially. Think about it. You're the CEO. Who else is going to do that if you don't do that? Okay? If you're in a business where you ship stuff to people, whoever's in charge of shipping the stuff isn't thinking about this in the morning. You have to think about this as the CEO, okay? I think this is an exciting thing to think about because it's intellectually challenging for you. If you have a leadership team around you, it creates challenging business opportunities for them. It creates opportunities for your employees to grow into bigger roles. It can cement your position in the category. It can build value for the shareholders, for all the stakeholders. Okay, so you've made it a priority. Now you've said, I want things in my life, I want my business to be 10x better, not 10% better, 10x better. So then what I recommend you do is you put together a dream team. I used to call, earlier in my career, I used to call these design teams, but after the 1992 Barcelona Olympics, I decided much cooler to be on a dream team. And for those of you who were at the Roadhouse Brewery and where I talked about my own battles with cancer, that's what really brought me back, was my healing dream team. And what I sought to do was assemble the best minds. And one of the things to be mindful of here is you don't necessarily want your dream team to be made up of your leadership team and your employees, because they have day jobs and you don't want to distract them. So this is a great opportunity to involve advisors, board members, mentors, even customers. But fundamentally, you just want to assemble the best possible minds you can. So let me digress for a second and give you a quick story. When I was building my company in Boston, Imagitas, I was invited to a Stanford Business School talk by a guy named Jerry Porras. Jerry Porras wrote a book called Built to Last. Built to Last was a seminal novel in the 80s and 90s around how to build great companies. He's a prof at Stanford. He's in huge demand. I went up to him after the talk and I said, Dr. Porras, I want you to be on my advisory board. He wanted nothing to do with me. I pursued him for a year and I got him on a dream team because I thought he could really have impact. And so when you think about your dream team, you don't want to think small. You want to think big about people who can have a lot of impact. And you'd be amazed at the people you can get to join your journey just by asking them and persisting in a professional and polite way, okay? So think about 4 to 6 contributors who become your dream team. Like we talked before, they can be advisory board members, they can be on your board of directors, they could be trusted leadership team members. And you just want to make sure everyone brings something different to the process. My healing dream team after Mass General was my first dream team, and that was my big insight. One of my PTs said, everybody brings something different, when I was amazed that they weren't actually competitive with each other. And then you want to make sure everybody's excited about being a part of this journey, because passion in the end trumps everything. Okay, so now you have made this a priority and you've assembled a dream team, and you want to go into step 3, which is you want to run a high impact, low work process. And what do I mean by that? What I really mean by that is, as CEOs of our businesses, our health, our life, whatever, we all want to do stuff that is high impact, low work. This is actually a high impact, low work, low cost process. And so what I challenge you to do is to invest 6 to 8 hours over a 6 to 8 week period in this process. Okay? So here's how you do it. You set up a standing call. It can be every week, it can be every 10 days, it can be every 2 weeks. Make it 1 hour. Send everybody on the team an Outlook invite with a dial-in number. And don't worry if everybody can't make it. Like, just schedule it. And so let's just use 6 meetings. You're going to have 6 meetings over the course of 6 weeks. Just send out a 6-week recurring meeting to everybody. And you know what? Not everybody will make every meeting because they have other lives, but that's okay. You just want critical mass. I mean, if you have 3 smart people on the phone with you for an hour, you can break through a lot of stuff, okay? And then here's my suggested thought process is start with basics. So start with, what's your purpose? Why do you exist? What's your mission? What do we do? And what are your core values? What are your beliefs and attitudes, okay? And then put on paper, start to lay out a vision for where you want your company 1.0 to go in terms of company 2.0, and lay out what's going to be the same and what's going to be different. So if you're really good at making product X, well, how can you make product X 10 times better? Or how can you go into new markets? How can you think much bigger about your current product? And so that's what you're going to start to outline on paper in your what's different. I think it's also useful to articulate what are your bold beliefs. What are some stakes in the ground that you're making as a leader, you're making as a company about this business you're in? And then what you want to do is you want to iterate with your dream team and identify potential paths. What are business ideas that can make your business 10 times better? If this is a health issue, what are health paths that you can take that are going to make you 10 times healthier? Okay? And then something I've had success with is actually assigning dream team members to write up the business ideas. You create a template and you write up each idea on one page, and then during one of your calls you actually iterate on each big idea as a group to optimize this. And then you develop evaluation criteria and you evaluate the big ideas based on consistent criteria. And then you calibrate the evaluations to ensure consistency. And I'll show you what I mean by all that in a minute. Okay, so now we have made 10Xing our business a priority. We have created a dream team, and we've set up a high-impact, low-work process. Okay, so now what you want to do is you want to evaluate. You want to evaluate potential paths. Now, keep in mind at this point, you might be 4 weeks into your 6-week process. You might be 3 weeks. You might be 5 weeks. Like that comes down to what cadence you end up picking up. And then what you want to do is you want to create a way to evaluate the different ideas, okay? And so in my case, when I was doing this for Linkwell, one of my dream team members came up with this process. We called it the evaluation benchmarking. And we said, okay, is this a big market? And can we get a reasonable amount of share in this market? And then we gave that 20% salience. So the percentages are all going to add up to 100. So we gave that 20%, okay? How does it fit with our current company business model or strategy? Is it close in? Is it way off the reservation? We gave that 25%. We thought that was really important because as a business, all businesses do something really well. Great businesses do something really well, better than anybody else in the world, okay? And so if you're doing something really well and you're making floor mats, you don't all of a sudden want to get into or retailing. Like, why would you want to do that? That's not going to 10x your floor mat business, okay? So you want to think about things that are more profit, more growth from the core of your current business, okay? And then the third one's really new resources or new capability requirements are going to come to play here, okay? And we gave that 10%. The next is execution. How, we all know this as CEOs and entrepreneurs. We get paid to execute, all right? And as one of my good pals once said, an idea and 50 cents is worth about 50 cents. And so you really have to think about, like, what's the executional cost and feasibility and complexity? We gave that 10%, okay? And then we went into, how does this create differentiation? How does this create advantage? How does this create market competitiveness? We gave that 15%. And then finally, we looked at financial pro formas. Is there a reasonable estimate of sales and profits? So that's our scoring. That's how we got to 100 points. And then we said, okay, as we filled out this evaluation benchmark, we said, okay, what key facts do we need to include in here? And we listed those, and then we did any other qualitative evaluations of these different factors, and then we actually assigned points. So let's say you have 4 different paths that your business can take, assign points. And what's going to happen is, it's not a perfect process, but it's going to be directional. You're going to quickly see what ideas score over 90 and what ideas score 70. And then what you want to be doing is spending time on ideas that are scoring over 90. And then what I think makes sense to do is do a comparative evaluation where you have 10x idea number 1, 2, 3, 4. You have all the points, and you can actually look at them side by side, because now you can get into the internals of, okay, this one really differentiates us, but it's really hard to execute. And so that's a consideration. Or this one has a small market but attractive potential financially. So it has good financials, but the financials aren't that big, right? So that's what this comparative evaluation allows you to do. Okay, once you've done all that, what I would then recommend is you call a special purpose board meeting. And if you have a board of advisors, I would pull them together. If you have an informal group of mentors, I would pull them together. If you have a formal board of directors, I would pull them together. And because that's their job. Whoever is advising you in your business, their job is to help you think big about the business. Yeah, they can help you with small things, but ultimately it's going to be much more interesting and much more rewarding for them and much more high impact for you if they are helping you 10x your business. So a final point here about boards of directors that I got out of a Harvard Business Review article. This is pretty stunning. If you think about the real purpose of boards, providing strong oversight and strategic support for management's efforts to create long-term value, okay? We can all agree that is the purpose of a board of directors or a board of advisors. Most boards aren't delivering on their core mission, okay? That's what the data shows. And so if you go through this process and then you pull your board together and you lay out this process, that is what they are there to do. Provide strong oversight and strategic support for your effort as a CEO to create long-term value. Okay? They're going to love it. Okay, that's what I had today prepared. I'm open to any and all questions from the audience.
Be sure to move your cursor over the upper right of your screen and unmute yourself.
Scott, do you have a question?
Chris, apologies, I've got a lot of background noise where I'm at, but I am kind of curious, if we go back to your evaluation metrics, I'd love to see exactly what type of numbers you put into that matrix next to your saliency percentages. Are you putting numbers that are on a scale of 1 to 100 in each one of those boxes?
So the way we did it, Scott, was we said, okay, let's just pretend we're working on 10x idea number 1. We said, okay, is it a big market or a little market? If it's a really big market, then we gave it 20 points, okay? Because in this case, the salience for market potential, 20% or 20 out of 100 is the maximum. So 100% of that is 20. If it's a small market, but it's still an interesting idea, you know, we gave it 5 points. And so each of these are percentages, but they're also absolute numbers of points that you have to assign to the different ideas, because they have to, in the end, add up to 100. Make sense?
That's super helpful. Thank you.
Hey, Chris, this is Paul Keenan. When you're assembling a board, how far do you go in and out of your own industry or projected industry? Do you try to get a broad group of people, or you tend to focus closer in on the actual industry? What's your thoughts on that?
Kind of expertise that you want on the board. And so, you know, I think good numbers for boards are 5. You know, 7's a lot, 9's too many, 3's probably not enough. 5's a good number. And so, Paul, my suggestion would be actually identify criteria. Like, let's say you're, you know, let's say you're in the business of making floor mats and selling them online. Okay. Well, you want somebody on your board with like domestic goods, household goods manufacturing experience. You want somebody on your board with e-commerce experience. You might want somebody on your board with big box retailing experience, because that might be a way to grow. Okay. You want somebody on your board. You might want somebody on your board with financial experience. So I would go about it very intentionally. And then you probably also want people with deep industry experience, whatever industry you're in. Those people who've been in the industry 20 years, they're invaluable. What they know, who they're connected with, they've made all the mistakes that you're probably going to make if you don't have some help avoiding them. Did I answer your question, Paul?
Yeah, I think so. That was helpful. You know, it sounds like you prefer, you know, obviously if you're selling floor mats, you don't want everybody to be in the selling floor mat business. You know, you want to get other outside things. And I think some people tend to focus in on exactly or closer in on what they're doing, you know.
I've often found that people from outside the industry can help you a lot, because they're not hamstrung by limiting beliefs. They don't know what they don't know sometimes, but they have great business experience, and they can bring a lot to the party.
Thank you.
Hey, Chris, I'm from Du Bois. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. How are you? What's your name?
Lois Wingerson. I think you've been talking to some other folks from Du Bois who've been involved with
Yes.
Silicon Couloir. So we're a group that, this is not actually strictly speaking small business, but as you know, we're a group that has been meeting kind of informally for quite some time to talk about issues that are very relevant to what you're talking about here. As a procedure
Yep.
going forward would be very useful. Already come up with several ideas. What would you think about, you know, and we've had a lot of meetings. Do you think that we should start this 6-week process now, which might lead to some weariness, or would there be a value to somebody going back and doing this spreadsheet that's on the screen right now, just from the ideas we've been talking about already, and then throw it back to the group? Do you think it's important for people to create the evaluation of their own idea? Or I guess the question I'm asking is it more than one person who sets these evaluation benchmarks, or is there an individual person who fills out this sheet?
So my experience, Lois, is that groups are generally better at reacting to things than to building things. Okay? So let's say, I don't know what I don't know yet about your group in Du Bois, but let's say that you have 10 people and you're all interested in creating an entrepreneurial ecosystem in Du Bois, and you've been meeting. I think what would be very powerful would be for somebody to actually say, hey, here's some potential directions we can go, and actually put those directions on paper, okay? And then say, as a group, let's evaluate these different directions and score them so that people have some buy-in to the process. You know, involvement always begets commitment. But I think you have to lead them by the hand a little bit. I wouldn't start from scratch. I would do pre-work, or maybe there's a couple of you that are the ringleaders and you do the pre-work, and then you get the ball rolling. And I'm just amazed at how people lean in and get enthusiastic and start to participate when you give them a little bit of a roadmap.
So
of how they can add value.
You think it would be good to have the group fill out the evaluation benchmarks once they've been presented with a document laying out the various different ideas?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Chris. I have a question. It's Catherine.
Hi, Catherine.
Thanks so much for doing this presentation and for all that you're doing in Jackson Hole and the Teton.
Catherine, where are you from and what do you do?
So I'm in Ketchum, Sun Valley, and I'm the new head of the Ketchum Innovation Center. So we have a very similar business model as related to helping entrepreneurial ecosystems thrive and survive and all that in a mountain town setting. And I'm a good friend of Scott's.
Excellent. Great. Scott's a good man.
Yes, absolutely. So I have a question about the dream team that you talked about, and the numbers that you mentioned are much smaller than the numbers that we have. And I think that one of the ideas I have is to create different levels of, and I'm just speaking specifically about a board. You know, we just have one board right now, but there are ideas to do advisory boards, or maybe a dream team is a subset of multiple groups. But my question to you specifically is, and this might pertain very much to others on this call, is when you have a large board that can be a little difficult to manage through processes, do you have any great tips for keeping things positive and keeping people excited and engaged and enthusiastic, but shifting their roles? So maybe trying to make a more tight-knit board and then create subsets of the board, but doing that in a way where everyone feels good about it. Right now, our board is 2 to 3 times what you're suggesting as an ideal size.
Okay, so there's a bunch of questions in there, and I'm going to peel it away a little bit. So I think there are definitely different layers of boards. Okay, so what we've done at Silicon Couloir is we have a board of directors of the nonprofit organization, but it's really more like a leadership team where Scott is our CEO and we're like the VPs, because we all do work and we all own different aspects of the program, okay? And there's 7 of us on the board, so 7 plus Scott, okay? So, and I think it's a very manageable number, and it's also a very collegial group. 3 of us are founders of the organization 5 years ago. We're still around, doing work, really excited, and so forth. Okay, so that's that. Then we have a board of trustees, and the board of trustees really helps us fund the organization. And so trustees commit $5,000 a year for 3 years, and then we invite them to be as involved as they would like. And so we present them with a Chinese menu of all these different ways they can get involved. And then we tell them we won't look down on you if you're not involved. It's a really brilliant, it's been a brilliant model. We have 22 trustees. And so we now have, over $100,000 a year that comes into the organization, but on a 3-year rolling cycle. Okay? So that's really been our revenue model, to fund SilConCouloir and fund all the programming. And the whole idea was we didn't want Scott spending all his time fundraising. We wanted him spending all his time creating great programming. Okay? Then we have dream teams that we create that are project specific. And so sometimes the dream teams, for example, I ran a dream team this summer that we called First Monday. We're looking at how do we share some of our programming across the state of Wyoming and with other communities. So I actually put together a dream team. Scott was on the dream team. Bill Watkins from the board of directors was on the dream team. The other 5 members, we had 8 total, were from the community and from my network. And so we were really seeking to not burden our board of directors with another team, but really create more bandwidth for our board of directors by getting other smart people in the community who like what we do. And I had a guy in Atlanta and a guy and a gal in Boston who participated in that dream team. They were super, super helpful, okay? Right now, we have a dream team underway to reimagine the Startup Intensive, which is our boot camp, our 10-week boot camp. And that's being led by Liza from our board, Sandy, who's the instructor, and it's like 6 other people who aren't even, well, there's a gal from Central Wyoming College. So it's a whole dream team without board members. And so that's the way, so we've got a board of trustees, and then we create these ad hoc dream teams when we're trying to solve a problem and make something 10 times better. Is that helpful?
It's extremely helpful. So basically you have your board, you have your trustees, and then I like dream teams so much better than ad hoc committees. That was kind of where we were going, but I think I'm going to use your terminology because I think dream team sounds so much better. But the idea is that it's a temporarily banded community that's specifically focused on a program, and then or a initiative, and then it disbands once that thing is done. So that's just an ad hoc.
Yeah, it's how movies are made, right? In the movie industry, you hire all these experts, you pay them to make the movie, and then they disband. Nobody's an FTE, everybody's a 1099, right? You make an awesome movie, and then you disband. In the next movie, you might recruit some of the people back. I have a personal pet peeve about the term committee, because I heard once this saying, walk through all the parks in all your cities, you'll see no statues of committees. And so I just think team, to me, feels like action and deliverables and getting something over the goal line, whereas committee feels like I'm dying in committee. So that's just a personal thing. And so I love the whole dream team thing. And when you recruit people to a dream team, they're like, oh my God, I'm being invited to be on a dream team. That's cool for them too, right? They want to do it.
So helpful and so timely. Thank you so much.
Something else just occurred to me, Chris, about the word committee, which is built from the word commit. Yep. And commit is something of a downer, isn't it?
Yes.
Dream is a much better word.
Yeah. Good point.
So Chris, this is Mike Easley in Sundance, Wyoming.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, Liza invited me to sit in. I just wanted to introduce myself. I don't really have a question, but I think your model is pretty exciting, and I can see some good application for it, and some of the things I'm working on for Powder River Energy, which is we're like Lower Valley. I guess we're the Eastern Wyoming version of Lower Valley. So
okay.
Just wanted to introduce myself and tell you thanks for let me join in and listen to listen and watch the video this morning.
Well, thanks for participating, and thanks for introducing yourself. And let us know if we can do anything to help.
You bet.
Hey, Chris, Larry Thal. How are you? Thanks for having us here.
Hey, Larry. How are you?
I'm well. You know, my thing is community design, integrated solutions for high performance living, sustainable communities, that sort of thing.
Yep.
And my question on Dream Team, what are the things that you see for inspiring people to join? There's a lot of inspiring projects out there, potentially, but to really capture the best, these are people who will need more than financial compensation. So what'll get them there, and what about financial compensation?
Good question. Well, I think it starts with you as the leader. You have to energize them, and you have to, enable them and empower them to be part of an exciting process. Like, you have to say, hey, this is a 6-week process. I need 6 hours of your time. You're going to meet some other interesting people. We're going to solve a complex problem. And, it's not going to be a heavy lift. So I always start with telling people it's not a heavy lift. Because nobody, as Lois said, people are reticent to commit. Because commit usually means time or money. Or sometimes it means time and money. And so I always start by saying, look, this is not a heavy lift. You don't have to quit your day job. You can do this very part-time, an hour a week. Everybody has an hour a week for something worthwhile that's short-term and comes to an end. And I think that's the first thing, is you have to energize them, and you have to paint an exciting picture. On the compensation, I think that is a really good question, and there's different ways to handle it. Sometimes, in the case of my 10X, how do we 10X Silicon Couloir across the state of Wyoming? Like, there was no compensation. This is a nonprofit, and I just asked my friends to do it for me because I'm passionate about Silicon Couloir, and everybody did it. In the case of a business, I think there's different ways to compensate people. You can pay people by the hour. What's a fair market rate for somebody with their expertise? And you can pay people through stock options in your company. If I'm making this up because I have no idea what I'm talking about here, but can you give somebody 500 stock options in your company if you have a stock option plan? And it's probably a de minimis amount. It's not going to affect your cap table, but it's going to make them feel valued. Okay. I think the other piece, we didn't talk too much about this, but this is important, is these things are a little bit about momentum. Like, as a leader, you have to create momentum. And what I always try to do is I always try to email my team at least once in between the meetings to show some kind of progress. And then what happens is somebody will reply all, and now you've got the team emailing to each other. So it's getting a little bit of a life of its own. And then good teams gel, and good teams become the Boston Celtics and go on a 14-0 streak like they've done, right? But it's all about chemistry and gelling. So I think those are some of the things that I've found. I found work. Now, going back to Catherine's question about boards, Scott does something with the Silicon Couloir trustees, which I think is absolutely brilliant. He sends out a monthly, we call it a 60-second connect, okay? And basically in 60 seconds, they can get an update of the entire month and what transpired in the world of Silicon Couloir for the prior month. So we think there are trustees, we think of them as community caretakers. They're leaning in, they're putting both time and treasure into the community. And part of that value exchange is we want to be respectful of their time, but we also want to keep them posted, because involvement begets commitment. And then it sparks ideas of how they can get involved. If there's a chance meeting coming up on, in 2 Mondays, I'm going to be in town, I'll come to that chance meeting. So those are some of the things we found that work. Scott, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
Chris, Scott had to step off. He was having internet issues.
Okay, very good. Okay, anybody else? Any questions?
Just to follow up on the dream team, how far do you let that, or hope for that team to refine what the business's core mission may be? Because one of the things you're asking them is, does this make sense? And they may say, yeah, 70% of that makes sense, but you should, clean up your act, or you're running in slightly the wrong direction. So I think it's the challenge of you define your goals, but you're asking people in. First, how tightly do you want to be defined before you throw it open? And then how open are you?
Well, I think it's important to always be open as business leaders, because none of us has all the answers. Okay, unless we're Steve Jobs or Elon Musk, we likely don't have all the answers, right? And so I think it's a perfect opportunity to question your mission. And you might take the first dream team call and actually challenge your dream team on your purpose, your mission, and your core values, because they can always be improved. Now, purpose, which Jerry Porras defined to me when I met him as why we exist. So in the case of Disney's purpose is to make people happy, and Apple's purpose when Steve Jobs started it was technology for the rest of us. Those tend to be enduring, like they're there forever. Like Disney is still trying to make people happy all these years later, right? That hasn't changed. Now their mission can change, because the mission is what you do to make people happy. So, I don't think that Walt Disney was envisioning buying the Star Wars franchise back in the day, but that's what the CEO did, because it was consistent with the purpose. So I would challenge, if you got this smart group of 5 people on the phone, like I would take an hour and challenge your mission and see if you can make it better. Scott does that with us every 2 years at Silicon Couloir, and we're just always refining those strategic elements of our bedrock.
Thanks.
Sure. Okay, anyone? Anything else? Otherwise, we will we'll declare victory, and I will look forward to hearing about all your 10x processes.
Thanks so much, Chris. Been great.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks, Sandra, for organizing.
You're welcome, Chris. Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.